Hello and welcome, friends. My name is Justin Waterfield. Thank you so much for joining me on this video. This is super exciting. We have a brand new Universal Audio product to show you today. But first, I want to ask you to please like and subscribe if you dig what we're doing here. It really helps out the channel. And today we are talking about amp sims, specifically UA's new amp sim. So back in 2022, Universal Audio released three other amp simulator pedals. We had the Dream 65, we had the Ruby, and we had the Woodrow. So we had two Fenders and a Vox, and everybody wondered, well, where the hell was the Marshall? It's right here. This is the Universal Audio Lion. This is the one we've all been waiting for, and I'm so excited to tell you about it. So, what is this thing exactly? This is a digital emulation of a 1968 Marshall Super Lead. So I'm going to pause right here and answer the burning question, what exactly is an amp simulator? It allows you to have the sound and the feel of this particular amplifier, which is a big, huge, fire-breathing tube Marshall head. It's big, it's heavy, it's got to be hooked up to a giant cabinet, speaker cabinet to take all that output wattage. Here you get this in a nice compact pedal form. And that's really why you would use an amp simulator. It's way smaller, way less fuss, way less maintenance. You don't have to change any tubes. You don't have to make any repairs to the circuit if something blows up. It's nice and simple. It's all done in software. It sounds and feels perfect. Plus, you get extra flexibility. You get not only the sound of an amplifier, you get the sound of 3 amplifiers and 6 speaker cabinets under the hood. This is a really, really powerful pedal, and we're going to talk about the features in just a second. So you get, like I said, 3 different amp versions. You get the bass, the lead, and the brown. Now let's talk about exactly what these are for a second. So back in the day, Marshall made 2 versions of their super 100-watt head. There was the lead version for guitar players, and there was the bass version for, I guess, bass players. Now, this is not bass amps as we know them today. This is just a Marshall plexi that was voiced darker than the lead amp. So you would have the lead amp, which was much brighter, and the bass amp that was voiced much darker, but essentially it was the same circuit. The brown setting here talks about a modified plexi. So in the 70s, a lot of guitar players and a lot of guitar techs would modify plexis with extra gain stages and adding tube circuits in there and just basically increasing the gain as things got a little more wild through the era of hard rock. And this brown setting very much emulates that. Then we have 6 different speaker cabinets that you can choose between to really finalize your particular sound here. We have mostly Marshall 412s with a variety of different speakers to help you tailor the sound, and we're going to look at those a little bit later in the video. Before we get to any sound demos, let's talk about the knobs. So we have the now classic UA amp sim format. We have 6 knobs, 3 switches. On this particular model, we have volume 1 and volume 2. These warrant a little bit more explanation. So on a super lead, you had 2 channels, but they're not the same clean and dirty channels like we think of today. These are 2 differently voiced channels running in parallel, which means at the same time, and they dump in together and get fed through to the rest of the circuit. And they're voiced slightly differently. One is usually brighter than the other, and you can get a lot of flexibility balancing each of these volumes against each other. In fact, the way that I set up a Marshall plexi is I just leave the EQ straight up the middle, and I get my tone from adjusting these volumes against one another in different ways. We'll circle back to that in a second. The last knob here on the top is the output, so this is just how loud the pedal is going to be. Then down here, the bottom three knobs, they serve a couple of different functions. There's the bass knob, there's the middle knob, and there's the treble knob. And these are just your standard EQ knobs if you want more low-end frequencies, if you want less middle frequencies, if you want to dial back the high frequencies, that's what these are for. This switch in the center flips the pedal into what's called alt mode. This allows these three knobs at the bottom to have alternate functions, and these are listed above the knob. So the bass control becomes the room control. So think of this as a bit of a mild reverb. This gives you a sense of the speaker cabinet being in a room. It gives the speaker cabinet model a little bit more room to breathe, and it gives you as the player something more to react to. This isn't necessarily something your listener is going to hear unless you really exaggerate it. This is more for you as the player. Then the middle knob becomes the presence knob in the alt mode. Think of presence as an overall tone control for the amp. So you have your bass, middle, treble to really sort of shape the preamp sound, but the presence becomes an overall tone control for the power amp. So how bright or how dark you want the power tubes, in this case, to be, or the model of the power tubes, I should say. Lastly, in the alt mode, the treble knob becomes the boost knob. So in addition to the amp models and the cabinet models, you get boosts, which exist in front of the amp. So this is as if you were putting a clean or a dirty boost in front of the amp to hit it harder and get more gain. And the boost option changes depending on the amp model you choose. Very, very cool, very flexible. The last feature that I want to talk about here is that this pedal, same with all the other UA pedals, has Bluetooth connectivity. Now, this isn't Bluetooth in the sense that it's going to pass audio to like a wireless speaker or something like that. It connects to either your phone or your computer, and it lets you edit parameters that are not accessible by the knobs or the switches. It lets you tweak certain things, a little bit deeper functions if you want to get really nerdy about your sound, but it also lets you manage presets. Again, this is a digital pedal, and you can store one preset on board the pedal, but if you want to flip between presets, if you want to load in other sounds on here, you do it from the UAFX app, again, which is available on your computer, your smartphone, your tablet, whatever you got. Rounding out the features, we got stereo in and stereo out. If you have any stereo effects, or if you want to split your signal on the outputs, you can totally do that and preserve your left and right. Now, as we get into the sound demos, which I know you all been waiting for, let's talk about the signal chain for a second. I got my usual 58 reissue Gibson Les Paul. I have some vintage style PAF pickups in here. My guitar is going straight into the Lion. The Lion is going straight out into the camera. That's it. All you'll be hearing is the Lion. This is super cool. All right, so let's start out on a neutral patch. Let's put the switch into amp mode, and let's put everything at high noon. And flip to alt mode, get the room control there, and the boost there. Okay, so basically it's as if we walked up to a Marshall plexi, put all the knobs at high noon so that we can get more or less of whatever we want. We are on the first cabinet choice, which is a Marshall 412 with Celestion Greenback 25s. I'm just going to hit an A chord on my bridge pickup and see how this thing sounds. Game over, right? Like that's just, Les Paul into Marshall. That's rock and roll to me, as far as I'm concerned. But let's go a little bit deeper. So remember I was telling you about Volume 1 and Volume 2 a minute ago? Let's see what these sound like. So right now I got them both up halfway on the dial. Let's dip out Volume 2 altogether. So Volume 2 is at 0. We're only listening now to Volume 1. Let's hear what that sounds like. And now let's do it the other way. Let's dip volume 1 out and put volume 2 up halfway and see how different the sound is. Huge difference, right? Night and day difference. So volume 1 is very bright. It's very, very aggressive. Volume 2 is way more dialed back, way less gain, almost kind of like cloudy and tubby, right? But listen what happens now. I'm going to dial up volume 1. So this is the bright channel. I'm going to dial this up halfway. I'm going to start with volume 2 all the way off, right? So we're just going to get the bright, aggressive bite of channel 1. Then I'm going to blend in channel 2, and you're going to hear how the sound really fills out. That is a perfect example. Now, I didn't even touch the EQ, and you heard how much the sound changed as I dialed in volume 2. You don't even have to touch the EQ on something like a Marshall Plexi, and thus the UA Lion. You can leave it, not even touch it, and get like 90% of your tone just from these two knobs right here. The other thing that I want to look at really quick is the room knob. Now, I'm going to leave the volumes at noon, where we were when we started. I'm going to flip to alt mode. So right now the room should be about 9 o'clock. Right? You don't really hear it. Let's crank it all the way up and see if you can hear it. Sounds like you put your amp in the bathroom, right? Like just all these early reflections and whatnot. So let's dial it back to about noon, see what happens. Still kind of sounds like you're in a little bit of a concrete hallway. So this is what I mean, like you can exaggerate this effect and it sounds kind of cool, right? But if you dial just a little bit of it in, it sounds less like you're putting your ear to a speaker cabinet and listening to the direct sound. It feels more like you've taken a step back from this imaginary amp and you're in the room with the amp, and it just gives you a little bit of bounce, a little bit more personality, and it's something that you can sort of play against. Lastly, we're going to take a look at the boost function here in alt mode. So again, the amp is pretty much set at noon. We are in alt mode, and we're going to start with the boost all the way off, which it was all this time. And let's hear what happens as we dial it up. Way more gain, way more saturation. A lot of the sort of clicky attack when the amp is just neutral, no booster, all of that goes away and it just saturates and it gets spongy and the bottom end almost kind of falls apart. Like it's a wild animal at that point. It's just, it's a really, really cool experience. And this is something that I think Universal Audio really deserves a big shout out for. Not only did they get the sound correct for this pedal, I've been a Marshall player all my life, for the record. I played plexis, I played 800s, 900s, I played the Jubilees, I played pretty much every Marshall under the sun. This sounds like a Marshall, but it also feels like a Marshall. When you put a booster in front of a plexi, it behaves exactly like this. The signal is not tight and crunchy. It gets spongy and compressed and starts to flub out and get a little wild on you. Man, they absolutely nailed it. Hyperbole aside, this thing is mad wicked. Let's take a look at the different amps on tap here. So I'm going to reset my patch. I'm going to go boost to 0. I'm going to go room at 9 o'clock, and I'm going to neutralize the EQ. So pointing everything at noon. You're going to get the volumes at noon. So just so you know, we've been on the lead mode all this time, which sounds like this. Let's flip to the bass model. Again, I'm not touching any other settings. Way less gain, way darker sounding. So this would be a cool amp model to go for if you play like a Strat or a Tele or a Firebird or something that's very, very bright, and you don't necessarily want that like really shrill high end, too much like ice pick in your ear. This is a good way to go. Or if you have really bright distortion pedals, like if you want to boost into this, if you have, like a tube screamer or something that you're just like, this is a little too much with the lead sound, go for the bass setting on this. Now let's flip to brown. Again, keeping all other controls the same. We're going to flip to the brown model and see what we get. Huge difference, even from, like, especially coming from the bass model, but even compared to the lead model, way more gain, but it's a different type of gain than we were getting when we were using the boost all the way up on the lead channel. It's very cool. It's very 70s arena rock. And of course, you can tweak it with the volume controls, you can tweak it with the boost, you can tweak it with the EQ, get it to sound exactly the way you want it. But then let's not forget, we also have the cab sim. So let's go back to the lead model here. Just a refresher for your ears, sounds like this. So we've been on the greenback cabinet all this time. This is the Marshall 412 with Celestion greenback 25s. Let's flip to the next available cabinet, which is a Marshall 412 cabinet with greenback 30-watt speakers. So these are like H30s. These were considered the bass speakers back in the day from Marshall. Again, not bass speakers as we know them today. These are just tuned a little bit lower. They have more power handling. But as a result, the speakers themselves don't break up quite as quickly. So you're going to hear a little bit more fizz in the top end, and that's very much translating the fizz from the amp. So here's what this sounds like. Way brighter. So, just a little tip, this might be a good one to pair with the bass model of the amp. Let's keep going here. The third option is a 412 cabinet with a mix of greenback 25-watt speakers and some JBLs, and a very famous shreddy guitar player from the 70s used this combination. Let's hear what this sounds like. Very nice. Number 4 on the list is a 112 cabinet. So we're going from big resonant 412 cabinets to a smaller 112 cabinet. Here we have a huge high-powered EV speaker. Let's hear what this sounds like. Even cleaner than the GB30 setting, it's just taken all that sound from the amp and not adding any color to it. It is as neutral as you're gonna get. Let's keep going. Slot number 5, we have a 212 cabinet with Celestion Creamback 65s. Here we go. Way more mid-range on that one. That's actually probably my personal favorite on this. Lots of nice mid-range detail. And last up, we have another Marshall 412, this time with vintage 30 speakers. Y'all should be very familiar with the sound. Anytime you walk into a guitar store like Long & McQuaid, you plug into a 412 cabinet, this is what it's loaded with most of the time. Here we go. At this point, let's take a minute to talk about the other animal in the zoo, the aux. This is the Universal Audio aux Stomp. This pedal is a simulator that's dedicated to speakers and speaker cabinets. So this might be kind of, a little bit of an oddball. You might be thinking, you got an amp sim here with cabinet simulation. Why would you need a separate pedal altogether that just simulates speaker cabinets? That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked. The name of the game here is flexibility. If you want different sounds than what's available on your amp sim, you can get them here. You have the ability to get more than one microphone on a cabinet, right? So you can have, for example, a dynamic and a ribbon, or a condenser and a dynamic, or whatever, and any blend of those two mics. You can EQ each microphone differently from the other. You can pan the microphones however you like. You can add overall master EQ and compression with the aux Stomp. You can add reverb, plate reverb, and delay with the aux Stomp. And you can save all that configuration into one of the 6 onboard preset slots. These are called rigs on the aux Stomp. This is the pedal where you're going to need that extra Bluetooth functionality. Remember, I talked about this a little bit earlier with the Lion. This Bluetooth connectivity links your phone or your tablet, your iPad, your computer to the pedal, and it lets you get at all of these parameters under the hood that you don't get access to with these knobs. This is especially critical with the aux Stomp. On the aux Stomp, you get the choice of 112 cabinets, 212 cabinets, and 412 cabinets, and a multitude of speakers in between. You get to choose a dynamic or condenser or ribbon mic for each of the 2 mic slots. You get to choose the model of the microphone in those slots. It's so flexible. All that stuff is available through the app, but let's just talk for now about the controls on the front panel. So on the top, we have the room control. This, like the Lion, is controlling the room mics. So this is just gives you a little bit of a sense of space to play with, like stepping back from the amp, getting a sense of the room that you're in. We have the speaker drive, which warrants a little bit more explanation. I'll circle back to that in a second. Then we have the output. You have the volume for microphone 1. You have the volume for microphone 2. You have 2 switches, which select between dynamic, condenser, and ribbon for each of the 2 microphones. And then you get your preset slots on this middle dial. The speaker drive is really interesting. What this does is it almost, to my ears, affects the age of the speakers. So speakers are electromechanical devices, which is to say they move. And over time, that movement will soften up, right? The speaker gets older, it gets a little bit broken in, it starts to sound its best, and then when it's really old, it starts to sound tired and kind of like it's given up on life. And this lets you select on a sort of variable basis how old your speakers want to sound. This is really, really cool. So let's look at some presets, and then we'll circle back to this. So this is a preset that I built in slot 1. Let's hear what this sounds like. Again, the Lion is on the lead setting, all controls up the middle, no boost, no cab sim, going into the aux, into the camera. Here we go. Let's compare this. I'm going to switch off the aux. I'm going to turn on the cab sim for the Lion, and you're going to hear the difference right away. So the only thing that's changed there is the cab sim. This hopefully highlights to you how much the speaker choice and the cabinet choice changes the sound of the amp. Most people think, oh, you can just run any old amp into any old speaker, doesn't matter, who cares? No. The speaker is what you hear. How the speaker translates what the amp is doing, that's the magic. That's why the aux stomp makes sense. Let's switch to preset number 2. This is another one of mine. Let's hear what this sounds like. Preset number 3. This is one of the built-in presets that came with the aux. A little bit more space on that one. I hear the room mics dialed up quite a bit on that preset. Sounds like you're funny enough in the room with the amp. Let's keep going. Preset number 4. Again, this is a built-in UA preset. So we got some plate reverb on there. That's kind of interesting. Preset number 5. Here we go. Sounds to me like a smaller speaker. So this highlights to me one of the really cool things about having a separate cab simulator. What I'm essentially doing is running a Marshall Superlead 100-watt fire-breathing tube beast into what sounds to me like a tiny little, probably 8 or 10-inch speaker by the sound of it. You would never do this in real life. You would blow that speaker so quickly, the whole thing would go poof in a puff of smoke. But in digital land, you can absolutely do it. And who knows, maybe it's a flavor you like. Maybe this fits in your track better than a big boomy 412. You have the option and the flexibility. Again, this is the name of the game here. Let's check out this last preset, number 6, on the aux stomp. So there's that reverb and delay I was talking about. Totally optional. You can put that on as like some extra polish for your tracks, for your live set. Saves you from bringing a reverb and a delay pedal along to your gig. This is definitely worth a look. And, you know, speakers and amp sims are such a subtle thing to the listener, and especially when you're in a band. You know, does the audience hear a difference? Maybe, maybe not, but it makes a difference to you as the player, and you have to decide which amp sim and which cabinets and this and that, what gear is right for you. So I encourage you to get down to your local Long & McQuaid, try out both these pedals. They are available now at all our stores. The Universal Audio Lion, the 68 Super Lead Emulator, the Aux Stomp, which is your dynamic speaker emulator. These are awesome. So awesome. Everybody should have one. Seriously, I'm gonna go out and get myself one of each. Thank you so much for joining me on this video. Again, my name is Justin Waterfield. Please like and subscribe if you dig what we're doing here. Thank you for spending your time with me. Hope you like the demos, and we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.